こんにちは。名前はエブリンです。今日はお茶ついて話します。私はお茶が大好きです。お茶は美味しいです。お茶茶道は美しいです。So today I'll be talking about the history of Japanese tea ceremonies. So I'm going to first start off with how Japan got its tea. I think there's a very large misconception that tea comes from England because England's really known for its tea, but that's not true. So Japan actually got its tea from China, and it's assumed that tea has been enjoyed since 646 to 794 CE, though the first official bringing of tea to Japan was between 794 to 1185 CE. This happened because Buddhist monks Saicho and Kukai went to China to study and ended up bringing back tea leaves in seeds to Japan. The tea leaves were then pressed into blocks called dancha, and this was prepared by scraping the tea off of the block into boiling water, though this method of preparing tea slowly started to fall out of popularity just because it was so time-consuming. Next, you'll have the Kamakura period. You'll start off with Myosin Aisai, who is a Japanese priest, and he also went to China and came back and founded the Zen Buddhism and was actually the first person to use tea for religious purposes. He also suggested grinding tea instead of scraping it, which is the most common way to create matcha. Some monks really did not like this method, but in 1211 CE, he was able to create a treatise on tea, and he claimed that drinking tea cured the loss of appetite, paralysis, beriberi, and boils and sickness from bad water, which sadly is not true, but it's really fun to believe. Then, in the 13th century, tea started to spread outside of the Uji district, where it was really popular in, and plantations started to be created for this reason all across Japan, just because it was so much easier to do that than ship it all over. In 1333 CE, nobles started to play games where they would quiz each other to see if they could tell the difference between high quality and lesser quality teas. And this actually led to betting later on, and those who were best at distinguishing tea were awarded very valuable prizes. I wasn't able to find what prizes they were, but I'm assuming it was some form of either high-end item or money. This started as a couple of cups of tea, but then it moved to hundreds of cups of tea, and it is suspected that they also passed a bowl around like they do in modern-day tea ceremonies. Then you'll have the Muromachi period, where Japanese architecture started to play a really large part in tea ceremonies. Originally, architecture kind of was like a palace-like architecture, which you'll see in the photo in the background, but it then shifted to a simplified style that samurais really liked, and then to a temple-inspired version. But something that stayed consistent was tatami mats, and they were a must in tea ceremonies. Tea no longer was used as a game, and it started to be used ceremonially, and all tools that were used came from China that were then placed on a stand to make sure that they were kept clean at all times. Then you'll have Murata Shuko, and people from lower classes really started to become interested in tea ceremonies, and they had gatherings in smaller rooms according to whatever that they could afford. Murata was actually a Zen priest, and he was the first designer of a small tea room, and he is regarded as the father of tea ceremonies because of his procedures and how they are still followed to this day. He would serve tea himself to the guests, and he really liked this simplified version of tea ceremonies just because they were more intimate, and you'll see an example in the background of how it's only going to be a couple of people and the prepare, not like 10s to 20s like it was originally. For the importance to culture, it really represents harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility, and modern-day matcha is used for the tea of choice, and it's one of the most popular teas in Japan and pretty much all over the world. Tea ceremonies were originally used by Zen monks and nobles for most of Japan's history, and while some may perform it for fun and as a hobby, most consider it a form of traditional arts or the art of tea. You must spend absolute years learning to be able to perform it as a job, and the point is to be able to perform it flawlessly without any thought behind each step. Some of the essential tools, these aren't all of them, but these are quite a few. You'll first need a fukasa, which is a cloth used for cleaning utensils, and the colors do differ between men and women. This is super important. You need to keep tea ceremonies clean at all times. Then you'll have the kama, which is a kettle for boiling tea, cha ire, which is a bowl for thick tea, cha shaku, which is a scoop for matcha, cha wan, which is a ceramic pot for drinking tea, cha sen, which is a whisk made out of bamboo to mix tea, and cha kin, which is a cloth used by the tea maker to clean the cha wan. For the steps to a tea ceremony, first is a tray will be brought out to the guests, and the preparer will sit next to them. The preparer then gets everything ready and then greets the guests. They use hot water to clean the utensils and to warm up the chawan. They then use the cha shaku to scoop the matcha into the chawan, and then they will then pour the hot water on top of the matcha. They will whisk it with the chasen, and finally they will place the tea in front of the guests, and the most beautiful part of the chawan will face the guests. And then here are all of my works cited. And the reason why I chose this was because tea ceremonies are incredibly beautiful, and if you ever have the chance, I highly suggest going to one. They actually do have it in the Botanic Gardens in Denver if you're ever interested, but they do fill up fast. I think this is super fun, and it's a really large part of Japan's kind of cultural history. So I hope you found this as exciting as I did, and thank you for listening. Arigatou gozaimasu.